for the podcast we did early in the month, and basically just straight up told me that your boy Erik Spoelstra is overrated, and you listed out reasons why. I can't remember what game was it that night that they played that they lost.
They were playing the Nets, and
It was the Nets game. 8 points in that fourth
they
quarter.
scored 8 points in the fourth quarter,
Yeah.
and then within a week they had a game. I want to say it was against Oklahoma City, and obviously Oklahoma City is very good, but they scored 9 points in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
So I'm like, 2 times in a week they can't crack 10 points in a fourth quarter.
And I said that's to say this for the next time on the podcast, and then like since then they've just can't see the close out games. They had leads against Milwaukee a couple nights ago, lost. They had a lead against I believe Toronto, almost lost. Won the game, almost lost. A lead against OKC, you mentioned, yes. Dallas the very next night, lost. So I get very defensive about Erik Spoelstra because I'm a Spol guy and have been from day one. I was one of the first guys to defend him when FireSpo.com was a thing during the first LeBron year, the first Big 3 year. People want him gone, and I was like, no, you gotta stay the course of this guy. This guy's great, and so I'm a Spo guy through and through. But I will say the argument since our text from 3 weeks ago, has not looked. It looks pretty bad because he have been struggling post Jimmy Butler trade. What's your assessment on Erik Spoelstra? Why do you think he's overrated? Tell the folks here.
It's important to know that when I say he's overrated, it's not like I'm saying that he's like the 16th best coach or the 17th best coach in the league. I mean, he's still probably like 3 or 4, but I feel like he was underrated for so long that he got to a point where now he's probably overrated. It's like he's still an amazing coach, but I mean, like, and you're like, well, who would you take ahead of him? Like, well, I'd probably take Ty Lue ahead of him, and not just because they won a title, but like I look at what he's done for years with the Clippers with George and Kawhi constantly in and out of the lineup, and this year, you really don't have Kawhi very often. You lose Paul George altogether. It's basically just James Harden and a bunch of guys,
right?
And they're still scrapping for a strong spot there. And when I watch Oklahoma City, like I did say earlier that like I could see them getting knocked off, the experience, the lack of shooting, but like they're probably the closest thing that I've seen from a ball movement perspective to the Spurs of, a decade ago, just in terms of the style they play. I know Shea will, go ISO a lot and he can get buckets in a variety of ways, but just the style they play to me from a ball movement standpoint. And look, I give him credit too for developing all these guys. I feel like we take for granted that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is probably going to win MVP this year, that Jalen Williams is an all-star, that, all these guys are making contributions. Like we give Spo that same credit for Max Strus getting a contract with Cleveland and turning into a great player, and Duncan Robinson getting a contract. Like I feel like he deserves those same accolades. And just when I started looking through it.
No, I'm glad I mentioned that because this is something I've been using for years with Spoelstra. What I define, one of the things I define in greatness of a coach is developing guys and how those same assets are valued by other people outside the team. So going back to like 2015, 2016, after the LeBron era. So he brings in guys that were assets that were diminished assets. A Luol Deng, for example. Luol Deng had 2 solid years in Miami. He goes to LA, gets a $74 million contract in 5 years, which at the time was a big deal before the big massive smoothing of the contract salary cap. A lot of guys, Hassan Whitesides, guys who were either got paid in Miami or outside of Miami getting paid more than they probably should. Gabe Vincent, another guy. You name it. You go down the list. Kendrick, not Kendrick Lamar, but Kendrick Nunn, another guy getting money in the Lakers. So Spoelstra has found a way to use G League guys or rookies or guys that were just left for dead. They come to Miami. They get involved in the culture. They're competitive here. The Heat are a playoff team every year, and then these guys go make money elsewhere because we can't afford them. Max Strus. You mentioned Max Strus, same thing. So to me, that's why I always value Erik Spoelstra is where he is most valued. The fact that he knows how to take talent that otherwise teams wouldn't look at, make them bigger than probably they really are, better than they really are, and then you go elsewhere and get paid big bucks. That's how I've always looked at it. And it's not a new thing. It's something I've been looking at for at least 10 years.
Yeah, and that's not me saying that he's not a good coach. It's just saying that I think that for the longest time, everybody in the league, it's just been accepted as gospel that he's by far and away the number one coach in the league. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, what have they really accomplished? And I mean, like in that Nets game, for example, like when they scored the 8 points, like they come out, get the first basket. So I think it was Jaime Jaquez gets a basket. It's
Right.
70. They're up by 8. I can't remember what it was at the time, but I think it was like 79-71. They're up by
They're up by a solid amount, like
yes,
eight or
yes.
10
So
yeah.
they're up by 8. There's like 11 and a half minutes left. And they only scored 6 points after that. But like, they come out with like an extremely small lineup. So Bam's not on the floor, Cleo Ware's not on the floor. And so it's like, how are they going? And then, inevitably they get punished in the paint. They can't rebound the ball. And so it's like, to me, I look at that, and by the time that he brings Bam and them back in the game, like the house is already on fire. It's too late. So I'm like, I don't know, like that doesn't strike me as great decision making. And then like, I mean, you listed out all the games. I mean, I've watched a bunch of their games since we had that conversation, and like especially the Milwaukee game the other night, same kind of thing. It was just kind of like, I don't want to say a meltdown because it wasn't like a 32-8 fourth quarter, but it was still the kind of thing where it's like, I want my coach to design some plays to get some easy looks. And I feel like they've still got good talent on their team, even with trading Jimmy Butler, which when I was talking to you earlier today about it, it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like he's got to own some of that too,
Okay,
because
yeah.
because I know it was a contract thing, but I think also one of the final straws was that like Spo wanted to bring him off the bench or something like that when he was coming back, a few weeks
No,
before.
I think there was some psychology behind that too, also to do that just to kind of piss him off so they can find a way to get rid of him. And there's some
Yeah,
psychology
yeah,
behind that. In
yeah,
my opinion, anyway.
yeah, true. Yeah, maybe. And maybe that's 100% right, and I'm wrong about that. But I mean, I feel like him being able to get the most out of his player, and to my point earlier, like looking at what they've accomplished, like I give them a lot of credit for building up those dead assets basically, but it's like outside of Jimmy Butler getting really hot in the playoffs a couple times, like the past couple years they've been a play-in team. I
Hmm.
feel like their talent is a little above that. If you look at the 1 year, I can't remember if this was the year they went to the finals or if it was the year they lost in 7 to Boston, but
What
where
was it? What was it?
it's when they won the 2 play-in games to get into the playoffs. It's
That
the
was the
eight.
year I went to the finals.
Okay, so you
Because
know,
the year they lost to Boston in 7 games, they were the number 1 seed actually that year.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, like they had to win a game against Chicago where they were losing with like 2.5, 3 minutes left in the game,
Correct.
and Tyler Hero hit a couple shots. I know Hero wound up getting hurt that year, I believe, if
Mhm.
if
You
I'm
did. You
recalling
got
correctly.
they're in the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like if Zach LaVine hits a shot or two at the other end, or if Hero doesn't make 1 or 2 of those shots, like they don't even make the playoffs. So I mean, like I'm just looking at like why were they in a situation to where and again, his
Eh,
brilliance is that
Listen, it's frustrating as a Heat fan.
yeah,
Trust me, it's
yeah,
frustrating to
yeah.
see this team to play on playing team year after
Yeah,
year.
yeah. So I mean, like when they're in the playoffs, like they're the hardest out ever because he is such a good coach. But it's like, why can't he get more out of them over an 82 game season for like an extended period of time?
Yeah, it makes
So
I
and so again, I'm not saying that he's the 18th best coach in the league. I'm still saying he's a top 5 coach. I'm just saying that I feel like we all take it as gospel that he's the best. Do we need to re-examine that?
I mean, this year maybe a little bit, but I think this year we'll see how the year plays out. Maybe
Mhm.
this team gets better, plays better at the end of the year. But right now, it doesn't look that good. If we're getting under 500, and right now, but another play-in situation like
Yeah,
the last couple of years has been, it is frustrating as a Heat fan to see that. Um, do I think it's overrated? No, I won't go that far. But I see your argument though. I do see the argument though because I think at the end of the day, when Spo had the best of the best, creme de la creme, he won big with them. Same reason why we praise Phil Jackson for, well, he had Jordan and Kobe and Shaq and Pippen, and you gave Spo similar pieces, and he won big with those guys. And you can argue still to this day, and most people actually agree with me on this one, that LeBron James' best and most productive years as a player was in Miami to this day.
true. But he was also in his like absolute prime in that
Right. But he
in
also,
that spot.
no, I agreed. But what I say to also to that is that, when he was his prime, Spoelstra utilized him in ways that no other coach has ever had. Like Spoelstra utilized him in a more efficient way,
Mhm.
whereas LeBron was shooting damn near 60% from the field every year because less shots and more efficient basketball. He forced LeBron to play power forward, to play closer to the basket, and to play more efficient. Something LeBron didn't want to do, but it was good for him because it helped him win. So Spo at least was able to push stars in ways that we look at some of the top coaches in the league ever played this coach's game has done, like Phil Jackson and Popovich and Auerbach and those guys. Spo has those same kind of attributes. So like Riley. So I do credit Spo for that. Now I will give you credit for this one. This year, I mean, outside the Butler stuff, you have an argument that maybe we have to come back to earth a little bit with Spoelstra. But I don't know if I go forward the whole overrated thing. And maybe it's just maybe I'm a little more protective of
But I mean, again,
the diehard Heat fan here, you know?
I've always been a big fan of his to the point where, like, for years I thought that he was underrated, and it's
Yeah.
just like in anything else where it's like I feel like when you're underrated for so long that you then become overrated because
Yeah.
everyone is always talking you up. And so I don't know, I've just been watching a lot more of them, and then I'm like, the last 2 years, like, I feel like they've underachieved, like, by
Without
a
question.
lot. Like,
Without
even
question.
now, like, if you tell me you have 2 all-stars in Hero and Bam, like, Bam not an all-star this year, but just he's an all-star level player, and then you add Wiggins, it's like they shouldn't be struggling to beat pretty much every team that they've played since they've made
Right.
the trade.